Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of History of Animation. Week 3 of anything that can go wrong will go wrong in the case of these stupid lectures, which are not stupid at all. I love them and they're great. I just can't seem to get out of my own way. Literally, Comcast was not working up until like 5 minutes ago, so I was panicked again that this one wasn't even going to work. That being said, awesome work with all of your paper ideas so far, and I'm starting to dig through the source documents, and it looks like you guys are all on the right track. If you have not submitted, and there are just a couple people who haven't, please make sure you are posting those assignments so you're getting credit. You don't want to not do well in a class just because you missed the early assignments and you turn in your paper at the end, but you didn't do the parts in the beginning, so you don't get the best grade you can. Please just make sure you are submitting work, even if you're late with it. The few people who are, like I said, I get it. This is times of COVID and craziness and all sorts of stuff. Please just submit the work. You'll get your grades changed from the zeros that are in there now, and you can get credit for that, those assignments. I was really into all the different ideas and things that everyone picked. I liked that a lot of times people play it safe and pick like, and this is not belittling it, but they'll be like, I want to do Pixar. But Pixar, everyone knows Pixar, but some people have a very good attachment or a nice attachment to it. So I like to see that. But a lot of people picked some anime, some other things, some Walt Disney, Fleischer Brothers. I really was into all the different things. Here's what I'm going to throw at you. If in these first few lectures we start covering something and all of a sudden you're like, I want to do more research, I'd like to talk about that, please don't change your paper topic. It would be so hard to pivot and move into creating a different paper after you've already kind of started this ball rolling. But reach out to me and I can always point you in the direction of getting more resources on any of the artists we cover or go over and stuff like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So this week we're going to talk about animation in the period of 1900 through 1918. And we're going to specifically talk about it by looking at the works, roughly about 10 pieces of animation, maybe a little more. But they start off with one from London, UK, Arthur Melbourne Cooper, and it's something called Matches and Appeal. And then from there, the next major movement forward that we can look at is something called Segundo de Chaumont, El Hotel Eléctrico, the Electric Hotel from Spain. And that had its own kind of moment and kind of push forward in what people were doing and seeing. And then from the US and UK, an artist named James Stewart Blackton created humorous phases of funny faces and started presenting it. And all of these things take what's going on in the world with film, photography, technology in general, and start pushing things a little bit more forward. Then kind of the next major thing to come out and kind of push the art form forward is in France, Émile Cohl makes Phantasmagorie, and it is something we're going to look at. And it is, again, just taking what all the people before them have done and pushing it forward and making it making something different, better, unique out of it. And then we get into the 1910 era, 1910 through 1914. And in Italy and Europe, you get a lot of experimental animation coming out from painters and filmmakers and things that you wouldn't think about. And while this is going on, you have people in Russia, Ladislav Starowitz makes this Praznikavnya Lutka, the beautiful Lucandia. It's a film that has a lot of stop motion animation in it. From London, in again the UK, Martin Thornton makes In Gollywog Land, and it's very stop motiony and cool, and it just keeps slowly pushing the art form forward. So we're getting into the era of then we start looking at cell-based animation with Bobby Bumps and John Randolph Bray doing animation that's stop motion called Further Breakthrough in Industrialization that gets very kind of narrative. And with cell process and Bobby Bumps being created, you get modern animation. You have the acrylic cells that are being painted on by hand, kind of like the experimental people in Italy were doing, which we'll get there. and then they pull forward, and now they start being like, okay, we're going to move these paintings by drawing them literally one frame. You have to have 29 frames for it to look like it's moving, so 29 acetate frames or cells per second, and people draw them and paint them. And from that cell process, we move into Winsor McCay with Gertie the Dinosaur, and his contemporaries, the Fleischer brothers, and that's where we're going to kind of pause this week. But there's tons of stuff going on at this time that kind of just leaps and bounds and builds off of each other. From here, if it's not with this little kind of fertilization era, you wouldn't get what's coming next. The Fleischer brothers are the first, but then you're going to have Disney. You're going to have all of the kind of people that Disney kind of influences, IB Works, and all of these people come from it. But this is the last of the sort of foundational stuff. From here on out, the principles, the groundwork, the foundations are laid. They are set, and now people just take those and tweak them and build them and do little different things with them, even in computer graphics. It's still very much steeped in the things that these people did with stop motion and cell-based animation in this era. Is it the coolest or quote-unquote sexiest era in animation? Probably not, but that's totally fine, because what we get is such interesting work. And then looking back on it, like I showed my kids, they're 12 and 9, I showed them, and that's kind of what pushed me to ask in the discussion thread. They were like, eh. And then my son busted out his iPad and literally within 3 seconds drew something that was, I mean, he's a great artist, but he was like, check this out, Dad. And I was like, but you couldn't do that on your iPad without, we had to get way deep into the weeds with it. And then finally they came around to my side on it. But the idea is, without these people and these techniques and these ideas, the art form wouldn't have moved forward, and films wouldn't be what they were, because all these things were used for visual effects and pushing visual effects forward as well. These are the things that give us what we now look at as modern cinema, not just animation. So I get a little nerded out with this era. So we're going to start by looking at Arthur Melbourne Cooper's Matches, an Appeal. It's basically a pair of matchstick men featuring in the stop motion animation feature. Promoting an appeal by the Bryant and May Company to donate a supply of matches for soldiers overseas. It's a commercial, public service announcement. Sits on top of a scaffold. The matches paints a message that the matchstick man, paints a message that says, for one guinea, Mrs. Bryant May will forward a case containing a sufficient supply, a box of matches to each man in battalion with a sender inside. Now, here is something that's interesting about this. It's kind of always looked at as like, this is the first. This was done turn of the century, 1899. And it was made to support the troops in what's known as the Boer War. But there's other people who say historically that this is probably done in support of soldiers fighting in the First World War, which would have made it about 10 years later or so. So let's take a look. Will not let me play. Weird. Let me get out of this view. Oh, that sucks. Oh, and they have to enable content. Duh. There we go. Back to play.
The oldest existing animated film in the world is British.
There we go.
The oldest existing animated film in the world is British. It was made in 1899 by Arthur Melbourne Cooper to advertise Bryant and May matches and created a sensation when it was shown for the first time.
It was astounding. The fact that he could actually manipulate these matchsticks, because they were matchsticks, and they were wired together with light wire and animated frame by frame, so that these little characters ran about all over the place and even appeared to write the message on the wall.
Matches and appeal. Ask patriots in the audience to donate 1 guinea to enable the Bryant and May Match Company to send a free box to every British soldier fighting in the Boer War.
I don't think that Arthur Melbourne Cooper realised this, but when he started to make a film called Matches Appeal, he was putting together a film.
So that is the only clip I could find was part of that overall documentary. But that was it. So if you think about it, all of that had to be done with each matchstick having little wires on it and filming it very intricately and creating it. And that is officially the first animated movie, technically. That's not what I wanted to do. So then from here, we get into kind of going on at right about the same time. Segundo El Chamon, he was a artist. He created this thing called the El Hotel Electrico. And it shows the story of a couple who arrives at a new hotel where everything is done automatically at the touch of a button. So everything is done for them. Their shirts are put away, their shoes are cleaned. But then when the employee that's in charge of it goes wrong and he has a few too many drinks, the hotel becomes chaotic where everything moves by themselves. It's pretty awesome to see. And he made it all with stop motion animation and film tricks. So fun. So basically all stop motion. So everything is still okay and working correctly. And the upcoming is where the animation gets really tricky, is when it starts to take over mind of its own. Once the characters are there, the animation, to me, would have been harder to do for the filmmakers at this time. And showed you push this button, you click it down, and now my boots are going to get cleaned. So again, all this stop motion being controlled by either wires or fishing line often. I gotta get mine something done here. I'm on vacation too. Sets up the button, pushes it. I can't imagine having never seen anything like this before. Seeing it for the first time, I think would have just been amazing, especially in 1905. Can we get a haircut for you, mister? Boom, time for some music. Let's go. Oh no, this is the writing. Alright, now we're going to get to the drunkenness and the franticness of things. It's my favorite part of this. There he is, all drunk, flipping the wrong switches. It's a warning of like not being too reliant on technology in 1905. It's pretty funny. Whoops, sorry, went too many. And then we get into moving over towards the U.S. side of things, where James Stewart Blackton was someone who kind of lived in England and then came over to America and made films that would go on to push people like Walt Disney, where he would see some of his exhibitions and things. The Enchanted Drawing is really hard to find a good streaming version of, but this is like considered one of the first animated films to be recorded on standard picture film, so kind of how Walt Disney would do it. But this guy, pretty much in America, was the first person that people saw and had them think to themselves, oh my gosh, I want to do this. How do I get this done? Let's take a look at humorous phases of funny faces. It's really interesting. It kind of looks like chalkboard art to me.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
can't tell, those kind of sideburns were very in 1905, 1906. Still very much stop motion in nature, though. Draw a frame, take a picture, draw a new frame, take a picture. Creepiest clowns you'll ever see. It's a lot of drawing. So that's, we don't want to start again. So that's really where you start getting in the idea of higher quality picture or picture quality, right? So from here, 3 years later, Emile Cohl in France creates a movie called Phantasmagorie. It's a film that basically consists of another stick man moving around and encountering all sorts of changing and morphing objects that transform into things like a wine bottle into a flower, and that turns into an elephant. There are also sections of live animation, where live action, I should say, where the animator's hand enters the scene, and the main character is drawn by the artist's hand right on camera. It's just it was just a huge deal, basically because at the time, it was longer than anything that had been done before. It was a little higher quality. And in France, it was a gigantic hit. Let's take a look. So not being done on a chalkboard per se. getting repaired. So again, each of these kind of growing or pushing the earlier one a little further. Emil Cole, again, hugely influential on Disney and the Fleischers and people like that. We still weren't there yet, though, because it was all being done very much on draw a picture, take a picture, draw a picture, take a picture, and not yet to the point where it could be as robust and kind of have the depth that you'll get to once you get to cell animation. And believe it or not, to me, in my opinion, I think that cell animation really would have struggled, or people would have struggled coming up with it on their own, had it not been for a group of artists in Italy and all throughout Europe, actually, that decided that they were going to use film, paint, and light to create a new style of art known as avant-garde art. And so what you see here, it looks like hairs. But if you can imagine, he would draw this on a piece of film so that this painting slowly looked like it was moving. So he would have a big piece of film on top of a canvas. He would shine the piece of light onto it. And then the painting, you could flip over these pieces of plastic and the light would overlay on top of each other, or you would be able to see through it and the paint would move down the transparent acrylic material. But they started playing around with light and color and film and paint and making it that way. So now you started having these people stack plastic on top of plastic to make something look like it was going to move. That ended up being cell animation. So here's a piece of that kind of Italian experimental. And it's really hard to find a lot of this kind of art. So things here, sorry, pausing, get out of the way, ads. So scenes here, this was a movie that was made, it was a political film, and they basically took artwork and made it move around. Sorry, I thought that I embedded a different slide, and it's not. So I'm going to show you this next week. Ignore this. This is a teacher mistake. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. But this is a different Italian film we're going to look at next week that is part of propaganda film that sprouted up after the war. So from here, where we're going to get to is we're going to start moving into the Walt Disney era, the cell-based era of things, how people are going to start drawing on acetate or cellular film, painting literally on top of it, and then moving that in front of the camera instead of starting and stopping the camera and making something happen. Kind of like merging flip books, photography, and filmmaking all into one new form of making animation. And that is where we're going next. Thank you so much for your patience, guys. Have a great rest of your day. If you need anything, email me, reach out at any time, post to the threads, and I will catch you all later.